Hello, welcome back to Out on That Line podcast. And folks, yes, we have another review for you tonight. And I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex, as always. Alex, how we doing this week, baby?
To quote the late great Clarence Carter, ooh shit, Clarence Carter, I be stroking, Jeff. How about you?
I think we're going to both be stroking a little bit tonight because, of course, we're going to be talking about Julian Casablancas et al., otherwise known as The Strokes. Their new album, Reality Awaits. But speaking of Nepo babies, Alex, I assume as a man that is online, maybe not as much as me, but a decent amount. Have you seen this Stella Lefty getting like shoved down everybody's throats?
Stella Lefty, I've avoided this one. Not yet there.
So probably now that I've said it and your phone heard me, since me saying it, you're probably going to start getting it. But there is this groundswell. So like the Ella Langley thing being an industry plant was like, I can take it or leave it with that, because it's like, what is country music these days if not a bunch of industry plants? You know what I mean? Or at least pop country. But this Stella Lefty thing, my God, I cannot understand the arguments that people are making that she is not a Nepo baby just because her billionaire father is not in the music business. He like was one of the founders of Groupon, I think, if you're looking it up.
I am looking it up. What I bumped on was he's involved with a company called Media Ocean, and I'm in a blood feud with Media Ocean because they fucked over one of our good friends.
Oh, okay.
So.
So she was the one that had the song called Boston that she ended up having to give writing credit to Noah Kahan because she just straight up stole the melody from Stick Season.
Oh my God.
And so he's on there as a co-writer. So there's also people making the argument that Noah Kahan actually like helped her write this song and trying to use that as like legitimacy for her being an artist. And he didn't. It was forced on there because of the interpolation that she used of his melody. And I think he's basically disavowed like any knowledge of who she is or what she's doing. And then so the same way that people kind of came after us about the Sienna Spiro incident, like with our pretty scathing review we gave her album. And somebody was on there like, talent hacks. You have no idea what talent sounds like.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, well, I responded to the comments, so you probably didn't see it. But I basically just like they called us losers, but with two O's. And so I
love being called a loser.
Yeah, I corrected the grammar. That was the comment. The only comment I left, I was just like asterisk losers. Just corrected it. And so this idea that like someone like a Sienna Spiro and a Stella Lefty can just happen in a vacuum with extremely rich parents and people saying that that's not a Nepo baby. Okay, I guess if a Nepo baby means that your parent is in the same industry, then that's a Nepo baby. If it's not, then you can't be a Nepo baby. I would argue that if every fucking door you could ever imagine is opened because of how rich your parents are, and you have access to whatever studio software, studio equipment, studio people, songwriters, whatever it is, you have access to all of that, like because of this money, in my opinion, that makes you a Nepo baby. And I cannot stand the idea that people consider them an actual artist. Like that is my biggest hang up right now in music. And I've been waiting to go on this rant because it pisses me off, Alex, that we have to sit here and listen to these talentless hacks force this music on us because their parents wanted their kids to have something cool to do.
Well, and also it's what an arbitrary distinction to be like, well, in order to be a Nepo baby, this argument's going on. I hate that I know this, but it's going on in pro wrestling right now. The great AJ Styles, who is retired, is now trying to help his son get into it. And there was some kerfuffle about he didn't help break down the ring at the end of an indie show. I could not care less. I absolutely could not care less if I had stock in the company. But like these arguments are the fact that people like you and me, ordinary folks, they feel compelled to take up for someone. It's like, why? It's such an arbitrary distinction to make, as opposed to like, well, Johnny Depp's daughter, who is actually talented. It bothers me less with actors in many instances, which I know is, again, another weird arbitrary thing.
Mhm.
But so because her father was a famous actor, Lily Rose Depp is a Nepo baby. But if Johnny Depp had been a musician or he had been a tech oligarch, it wouldn't be nepotism. My understanding is that nepotism was using your power to find opportunities for people close to you. I didn't think it had anything to do with like a very linear sense of working in the industry. The connections you have are the connections you have. And do not tell me that this guy, her dad, Eric Lefkowski, who is part of a healthcare AI, something called Tempest AI, he's involved in all of these different like tech organizations and stuff like that. He's a billionaire. You mean to tell me that that guy can't find a way to wink, wink, nudge, nudge the algorithm and shoot this kind of shit out there? And I will say for Lefty Lefkowski or whatever the fuck her name is, I've never heard her shit. Maybe I'd recognize Boston if I've heard it. But you look at something like Gracie Abrams and you go,
Mhm.
this is objectively bad. And I know there are people who like it. There are people who like Taylor Swift, and her music is fucking unlistenable. I love Steely Dan. You fucking hate them. So it's different strokes for different folks up to a certain point. But there's like no arguing it with things like Gracie Abrams. She
Mhm.
is so patently untalented and shoved down everyone's throats. And there are people accepting her. So when you do what our dumb friend who called us losers on the Sienna Spiro thing and is like, oh, you're not selling out arenas, blah. It's like, yeah, no shit. But this is people who have accepted this. They've accepted the lowest common denominator. There's nothing about it that's organic. She wasn't playing in coffee shops and getting discovered. She was hammered down your throat by the powers that be, and you accepted it. And that's fine. But don't sit there and tell me, like, no, this is a person with the credentials to back it up. It doesn't fucking matter when you see that they got there. I don't care how talented you are. You got there on the strength of your progenitor's accomplishments. It's crazy. It's crazy how people will take up for these Nepo babies. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean the Nepo babies are like bad or evil or so. Again, like Jack Quaid, he's Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's son. I like him. I think he's talented and fun.
Mhm.
There's exceptions that prove the rule. So they're not like bad people, but the concept of them can be galling. And the fact that ordinary people are like, you're a fucking loser because you don't just lie down and let the Nepo baby piss in your mouth, it galls me.
Yeah, there's and I like I'll never be one of those, and I think actors again, I think just like you, like I don't it doesn't I think because there's so many of them and it's hard for like an algorithm to like force an actor on you because they have to be in something. You know what I mean? Like somebody has to, like Jack Quaid had to be in The Boys for people to really know who he is, right? And he did a good job. So if they'll get put into things, and if they're not any good, they'll stop getting put into things. That's how that generally goes with actors. So like if I think acting, the Nepo baby actors, like if you have the talent, you'll stick around. It's like Ethan Hawke's kid, Maya Hawke and Uma Thurman's kid. Like she's a pretty good actress. She did the Stranger Things. People loved her a lot. She's done some other stuff, and like I think she's focusing on not doing like huge blockbusters. She's doing things like her dad did towards the end of his career, like her mom has kind of done the whole time, which is like more interesting pieces of art. And so she got maybe the door was kept open for her to do that. But if somebody's got the talent like a Jack Quaid to like keep doing that stuff, then that's fine. I think there are so many actors and so many talented actors that, yeah, maybe they took a part away from somebody, but maybe that movie wouldn't have even been known by anybody if they weren't in it. So like there's arguments either way. I feel like the Nepo baby actors probably have the biggest claim for like being legitimate, I guess, as far as that goes. Like the musician ones are where I like really draw the line hard, because it's one thing if you're like, if she went into the Groupon business because her dad started it. I'm like, okay, well, he started that business. Like, what are we going to say about him, like benefiting his family from it? But his daughter decided she wanted to be a singer, and she wanted to be a country singer. And so he's like, okay, I can make that happen for you. So let's pay to get this on everybody's algorithm. Let's have you appear on all these things and pay to do that. Let's get you the best songwriters to put this stuff together. And we're going to just force this down everybody's throat and take up all the space that somebody a lot more talented would probably fill if you weren't there. And like Gracie Abrams being like attached herself to Taylor Swift, who was a Nepo baby herself, because of how much money her dad basically bought into the record label to even get her involved in it in the first place. And it's one thing if you are, I can't think of any like transformative Nepo babies, somebody that like would have been famous no matter what. And we're certainly not going to talk about one tonight, I don't think, with Julian Casablancas. It's just really baffling to me that people accept this. That if you are really a music fan, and maybe they just don't care that much about music in general, like if it just sounds good, that's all that matters. But when they're like art, music to me, especially all art in general, like has to come from a real place. That's why AI could never really do it and could never really like do it well, I guess, because it has to come from somewhere real, whether that's like extreme pain or extreme happiness, but it comes from like a real emotional place, like the best art does. And to just like decide you want to be a singer, decide you want to be a country star, and then to have the machine available to you to make that happen and to not call that a Nepo baby is just absolutely crazy to me.
Especially because music is an industry where it's so easy for shit to float to the top and for the lowest common denominator to thrive. Stand-up comedy and music are the two worst offenders of this, like Jelly Roll, the perennial punching bag that he is. Jelly Roll, you listen to his music and people are like, oh, his story. Okay, he got saved in prison or whatever the fuck happened. La la la. This isn't necessarily like a referendum on him as a person, but on him as an artist, he's got nothing. He's got nothing in the tank. He is creatively bankrupt. So is Walker Hayes doing the Applebee's song. I think Hayes from Texas. It's an earworm because it's been smashed home through its ubiquity. So do I think any of these are like bad people? No. Do I think they're talented? No. I think Walker Hayes is a fucking hack. I think Jelly Roll gets way more credit than he deserves. And I think Ella Langley's a flash in the pan. I'm sorry. Not bad people. Hey, any of you guys want to get together and hash it out, talk about this? We'll go get some poke. All right. Moving back to the Portland area, we're going to get some poke. All right. Okay. It's going to be good. We'll go to Great Wave Tuna. But I guess the point is like with music, it's so easy to accept the love we think we deserve. Like, this is the music that's being given to you, therefore this is what I listen to. There's so much out there, and you can like sit and take the time and try to build like a taste profile for yourself and figure out like what I like, what I don't like. Music does not matter all that much to some people, and those people are called Morgan Wallen fans. Who just don't give a fuck. But it's true. Like, I love my sister, but she's like, she couldn't give two shits about music. So everything she likes is crap. It's what's on that get like taps into that biological instinct that gets you moving. But she's not passionate about anything the way that you or I or Tanner are. So it's especially galling with the musicians, and that people take up for them to the point where they lose all grasp of the English language and of grammar. And they call us a bunch of losers. That energy is better spent volunteering at a women's shelter.
Yeah. Or you go volunteer at a kids' music school and discover somebody that's actually got some talent there.
You go. Find the next Gracie Abrams. Why not?
And speaking of Morgan Wallen, did you hear about the guy that pissed on a family at a Morgan Wallen concert?
No, I'm surprised that only happened once, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the second worst thing that happened at that concert. And then he started singing.
If that forced it to force people to leave, I'm all about it.
That's
I'm gonna start going and pissing on people at Morgan
They-
Wallen concerts.
they didn't realize that was going to be the best part of their night.
It's like Gallagher.
All right. Well, what do you say we dive in on this Strokes album?
If we
So,
must.
folks, the Strokes. Now, I unabashedly love the "Is This It" album. Is I think the one that they're most known for. I think, definitely very associated with bands like Arctic Monkeys, the Fratellis, like, kind of that indie rock, but a little bit on the edgier side of indie rock. And Julian Casablancas, the lead singer, I think generally known as the kind of creative, like, engine behind this. I think, there's a Fabian something is like the guitar player that has a lot to do with the structure of the songs and everything. But Julian Casablancas, the reason we were talking about Nepo Babies is because he has, I can't remember what industry his dad is in, but like a very, very successful businessman. So Julian Casablancas had all the time in the world to become a musician and take whatever shot he needed to at it.
Real quick, his dad co-founded Elite Model Management, which is fucking huge.
Okay, well, that's and also probably has ruined a lot of lives associating that closely with the music industry. Just gonna say, the early Strokes albums, I think they rightfully were looked at as one of like the premier like rock and roll bands. Like they were looked at as one of those bands that really were kind of carrying the torch of like, from what Led Zeppelin was doing and then what Nirvana was doing, and like somebody that was kind of on the edges of what like popular music was and making stuff that didn't necessarily sound like the rest of the pop music, but was good enough to be on the same radio stations as all of that really popular music. Now, all of that being said, this album, Reality Awaits, I think is a big reality check on what Julian Casablancas might have left in the tank creatively here.
I mean, you want to talk about the Strokes? I feel like I had one listening to this album. I'm sitting on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you look at the amount of Strokes material that there is, and off the top, I'm not going to sit and speak from a position of authority, but 7 studio albums since 2001. So it's a slow moving, like they found a way to take their time and dig in, and that's all well and good. But it's the thing we've talked about before where anticipation builds between projects, and when it doesn't deliver, now everybody's got a ton of time to sit and think about what went wrong and what could go even worse going forward. And it's really unfortunate because the new abnormal was a return to form critically. It was really kind of like, to me, the first Strokes I had really sat down and listened to front to back out of a sense of like exploration. And I really enjoyed it. And it did well critically. So for this album to then follow it up, like it felt like the question that they posed with this album, and it's a deadly question, is we went back to what people loved about the Strokes with the new abnormal, but are we still interested in doing more of that? Are we still interested in pursuing excellence in our sound? It's a crazy question to ask, to the point where it makes this album feel deliberately befuddling. It makes the album feel like the goal was to set out and test your patience and test your fanhood. It's kind of an Emperor's New Clothes thing. Are you so diehard for the Strokes that you are unwilling to come out and say, this was really bad and this was really confusing? Because this is a pretty bad fucking album, and we will get into it. But this is the worst of their impulses turned up to 11.
And I think this is not helped by it being produced by Rick Rubin. And
correct.
I think this album is probably where the Rick Rubin train like comes to a screeching halt, because now I will say Rick Rubin, like associated with Def Jam, back in the day. Like Rick Rubin has produced some of the like greatest albums of all time. Like Licensed to Ill by the Beastie Boys was a Rick Rubin produced album. The Black Album by Jay-Z was a Rick Rubin produced album. There's tons and tons more that I just can't pull off the top of my head, but like those are two albums that I have listened to front to back. I don't even know how many times. And his whole thing is, they call him like a guru, and his whole thing is vibes, right? Like he doesn't really know much about music theory. He honestly, I don't think he really knows much about like producing in the physical sense of it. I think his thing has always been, I know what sounds good. And in a lot of cases, he was right, and also, the artists themselves, obviously being extremely talented and kind of knowing what they want to do probably helps as well. I think his thing was the way he would push people in studio would come out with like some of the greatest work they've ever done. Right. So there was the time that they were doing that. And I think maybe when you have a band like the Strokes that seems like they just don't have much left in the tank, and then you have someone like Rick Rubin who seems like he's got zero left in the tank, this is the kind of album you come out with, where they think it's a good idea to use auto-tune literally the entire time on this album. And it's like, it sounds like Julian Casablancas, but at the same time, it doesn't. Like his biggest strength always was one, like the lyrics were like always kind of like clever, same way that like Arctic Monkeys was. They would do those like really choppy style lyrics, and then they would go into, an actual like kind of big chorus. Like there was some really, really good vital rock and roll music that they were making. And Julian Casablancas is like, I think he kind of leaned into that. Like, I'm a rich kid. Like I've got this attitude and that little bit of a snarl in his voice and stuff like, and it sounded like he was disinterested in anything that he wasn't interested in. Like that worked. Like that kind of attitude, that like prep school kid attitude worked very well. Now here, it feels like they just feel like they have the right and the place in this genre or in this like industry, that they can just do whatever they want, and it's going to be successful no matter what, and people are going to love it no matter what. And as soon as I heard that they used auto-tune on this before I like listened to the album, just from being online as much as I am, and I was like, well, maybe if they used it a little bit, that could be interesting. Like I could imagine like Jordy Greep using some auto-tune in like a very interesting way, right? Like that wasn't automatically a non-starter for me. Like I love T-Pain. Tallahassee Pain has saved me many times. It's like, that's not always a bad thing to me. It was a terrible thing on this album. And to use it here and there sparingly would probably be fine. Maybe to use it as like a call and response type of thing in your lyrics would be fine. But to literally have, I don't know, is there a part of this album that he doesn't use it on? The whole thing.
There are, I want to say either Dine and Dash or Lonely in the Future, it drops out. There are pockets where it's not total auto-tune the whole way. And those are unfortunate. Those are a mistake because they show you what could have been.
Yeah. And it really, what's frustrating to me, I think, is because the Strokes have, like, of all of those bands, I think it's like the Strokes and the Arctic Monkeys that are really the standard bearers for kind of like that era of music. And like, look what happened to the Arctic Monkeys. Like, I don't even want to get into the Car and the Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. Like, those albums are some of my least favorite things I've ever heard. And then to hear this album, when I was like really excited to hear another Strokes album, and honestly, when I heard Rick Rubin was producing it, I got excited about that, even though he's had mostly misses instead of hits in the last probably decade or so. I was like, okay, well, this is like, maybe they're going to like catch lightning in a bottle here. They've got a producer that that is known for pushing artists in a weird way and getting some really like weird and cool stuff out of them. And they've got a band that's like trying to hang on to what made them, like, that gave them the glory. And it just feels like there was so little interest in making this like an actual Strokes album. And they were so focused on, I think, on like subverting expectations of like what this album was going to be, that they've just completely missed the plot totally of what it should have been.
I think for me, the problem primarily lies in like the auto tune is a symptom of the bigger issue, which is this feels like, so another one of Julian Casablancas's projects is The Voids, and it's much stranger, and it feels like the Voids have broken down the gates of Jurassic Park, and they're flooding the area, and it's chaos in Act 3, where it's the strangeness of the Voids has been grafted onto the minimalism of the Strokes, where like you're still getting like the tight interlocking guitars and the tight rhythm, um and some of this like propulsive new wave quality that you get with the Strokes, but then on top of it it's like the synths, the slower grooves, the like 80s texturing, and the super obvious auto tune come in and kind of steamroll over these songs that could have been good. Like I look at something like Psycho Shit, it's got a very interesting, almost like Muse-esque, creepy, like it was doing some interesting stuff structurally. It ultimately didn't go anywhere. And then on top of it, the auto tune just ruins it. And it's like, if you want to use it as a stylistic choice on, you know, a song or two, or if there's a more creative way that you're looking to deploy it, then I don't rule it out completely as a tool. It's like you named a bunch of people who use autotune, but they use it well. It's
Mhm.
not a distraction. And this, it draws so much attention to itself that it lulls you into a false sense of security when a song sucks, and it distracts you when a song actually has potential. So I just think it was a strange choice to do all of that with his voice, especially when like we're touching on themes of like alienation, aging, consumerism, conformity, disillusionment, nostalgia. Like it's all serious stuff. And if you want to treat it with a deft touch and you want to be funny about it and tongue in cheek and have kind of a Caroline Rose devil may care attitude about it, like more power to you. But this again, it's an album that's a tale of splitting the difference in a bad way. It just feels like it doesn't take itself seriously enough in the moments where it should, and it takes itself too seriously. Like the autotune simultaneously feels like, "Well, I don't give a shit," and then also feels like this is artistically important. Like
Mhm.
we made a strong choice. It's like you made a strong choice. Unfortunately, it was the wrong one. It did not pay off, and it does not work. And it's really unfortunate because you hear the glimmers of a good album in this thing, but they are stomped all over by weird, weird instincts. And there again, Rick Rubin is, you know, like you said, he doesn't have a strong foundation in music theory where he can sit there and tell you the wheel of fifths, but he does know his way around the equipment. I watched a thing with him and Paul McCartney going over like old Beatles and solo McCartney masters. So he knows ball. But I don't, but you know, just because he's got the long beard and he's barefoot all the time and he's a vegan, like let's not over mystify him
Yeah.
because he whiffs a lot, and he whiffed pretty hard on this one by not having like, there's something to be said for letting your artists like support them and let them have the runway, but a good producer, I think, isn't afraid to step in and show you how to swing and speak truth to power and go, I think you can do better.
Mhm.
And at no point did he step in and curb some of this shit. And I think it's a poorer album for it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue is if this was like a brand new artist and we didn't know who Rick Rubin was, you know, that'd be one thing, right? But I think you can't help but compare what they have both done in previous like generations of the music industry, right? So it's like some of my favorite albums I've listened to were Rick Rubin produced albums. So like it hurts when this album sucked so bad knowing that he was the one that produced it and realizing that I'm like, the wheel of time continues to roll on and it will leave people behind. You know, it's crazy to think that of that generation, there are some bands that have like remained relevant and remained vital because they've changed along with, you know, they were making the music that was important to them according to where they were in their lives, right? And hearing Julian Casablancas, again, like somebody that is a result of extreme wealth and a result of like extreme privilege, talking about AI and talking about isolationism, it's just hard to take it seriously. And if there was an attempt to do these things like tongue in cheek, it missed. If there was an attempt to do these things like very earnestly, it missed because of all of the auto tune. It's like there was so many lanes they tried to go down and didn't set foot really firmly in any one of them on this album. Like in reading through the lyrics, I mean, not that the Strokes were ever like, as we say, it's not, they've never been Bob Dylan's Masters of War, right? Like they've never been that level of lyricism. They've never been like politically important. It always was just like fun, a little bit gritty, like edgy rock and roll music that, the broad population, if you liked rock and roll at all, you probably could enjoy the Strokes. And this does not sound like the Strokes to me. It has like little whiffs of it, little glimpses of it, but this is not a Strokes album. And especially after seeing, I know it was 6 years ago and it feels like a long time, but like that's considered in their like later career, they were still capable of making a very good Strokes album. And to go ahead and do this and make us think that this is going to be like the next big part of your career, like the next big thing that you've done because you had Rick Rubin produce it. I just can't, I can't think of an album that was more anticipated than this that fell as flat as this did. Like maybe Starcrossed by Casey Musgraves, where it's like you can hear like the little glimpses of of what they do, but after an album like Golden Hour to go to like Starcrossed, you're like, what the fuck is this? And it's the same thing. And like, while this is not, their previous album was not, I think, as good as Is This It? Like that's one of the premier, I think, rock and roll albums of the 2000s, like of this millennium. Like it just is, it feels like the disappointment grows even more, like because of what it could have been and what the expectations were.
I think expectations is where it gets very, very dicey for a group like the Strokes and an album like this, because to try to put some positives out there, I jotted some stuff down. They avoid the trap of being like a heritage act and mailing it in. You cannot say that this was mailed in. Everything about it was deliberate and they were engaged, and Julian Casablancas is engaged in this. So you can't take that away from them and from the process. It's just the buy-in went towards stuff that just purely didn't work. But that's the thing, is like you hear these moments where that like melodic discipline that the Strokes have is kind of reining in some of the crazier Julian instincts. It's a delicate balancing act. You want to tap into a mind and a talent and an instinct like that, but if you let it go all the way, sometimes you get out over your skis. And this album suffers from that problem, where there are times where it's like a bunch of extremely disciplined musicians are getting together and trying to like keep up with and pivot with whatever bizarre thing Julian decided to do that afternoon. It's songs that meander and don't really go anywhere. It's songs that are provocative, but like lyrically provocative, especially when it comes to politics, but toothless, which is like the worst combo. And the biggest problem is the hybridization between Voids and Strokes is like it doesn't complement each other. It just clashes so hard. So like in terms of expectations, you largely know what you're going to get with a Strokes album. Unfortunately, they also, part and parcel with that is you must also know that they're probably going to do stuff to piss you off on purpose. The problem is it just does not pay off in any interesting way here. Like I'm fully capable of being frustrated by something. Like in film, I love David Lynch, and he tortures his audience sometimes,
Mhm.
whether he intends to or not, by being like, here's a 5-minute sequence of someone sweeping a floor and there's no sound and he's just sweeping. And you're like, oh, well, David Lynch is an auteur, so I don't want to be stupid and not get what he's doing. So I'd better try to find the deeper meaning and connect all this. And it's like sometimes there's just not something there to connect. Like the concept of genius, we treat it like this thing we can never hope to understand. And it's like you're taking you're inferring from all the good things that are happening that everything is good. But I think geniuses fuck up all the time and make crap all the time. And we just don't know it or don't want to accept it because we've assigned the label of genius. And whether you think Julian Casablancas is a genius, like your mileage may vary, but you cannot deny creative and talented and interesting. And that all got smothered on this album. It's really frustrating. Like, why are you trying to take one of the most recognizable voices in rock and roll that you already heavily distort in the history of the Strokes catalog,
Mhm.
but to do it in this like incredibly ham-fisted way with autotune? Autotune's so obvious, it's so indelicate, and you're just creating so much more distance between you and the listener that for the kind of music you're making does not pay off in any way.
And that's my the biggest issue is it feels like there was a message they were trying to give, and there's a difference. There's sometimes an artist is trying to give a message and you understand what the message is and it just doesn't click for you personally, right? There's times that happens, but then there's other times where I can't see how anybody does click with the message they're trying to, like, I know what the messages they're trying to portray is all those things you said, is the isolationism, is the reliance on technology, it replacing human creativity and everything, but it just feels like the message you're trying to give is just reinforcing why those things are a problem, instead of like offering, maybe you don't have to offer a solution, but it doesn't feel like a criticism when it completely overrides the message that you're trying to give with the album. I think is the biggest thing, is like you can say all of these things about how AI is bad, how this political thing or that political thing is bad, but when that message can't get delivered because you're using all those things that you criticize to deliver it, but you're not doing a good enough job like showing why they're bad, like all you're really doing is kind of reinforcing those things and showing that, oh, well, if you can't really criticize them like logically, then they can't be that bad. Maybe he's not like waving the flag for AI being good, but by trying to make this criticism against it and having it fall so flat, you're almost like, by not having an argument against it, it's like the negative of that is creating the positive of it. And I think for the Strokes, it's really disappointing because it's always hard to hear bands that had so much vitality and like so much swing in their genre just completely strike out on an entire body of work like this.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough because it falls into the bad satire trap, which is like the whole number one rule is it has to be distinct enough that you still recognize it as satire. Otherwise, it's just becoming more of the thing you're satirizing. So there's plenty of points on this where on this album where they kind of fall headfirst into that. And I will be honest with you, when Psycho Shit first came on, I was like, okay, this is immediately different, and I'm switching gears accordingly, and I'm with them. This is going to be something interesting. It's starting off as a slow burn, and to give the song credit, it does. It starts off as a slow burn, it eventually gets there, it maybe didn't go as hard and go all the way as I would have wanted, but like sonically and dynamically it built and it went over the top and it's like, okay, that is not bad. But and you go, holy fucking shit, he's going to do this for the whole thing, isn't he? This is going to be the whole album. For as bad as it is, like if it had been just a hair of it where it's that kind of thing where, every now and then you catch like the little bend and you go, what?
Mhm.
If it was a tiny little thing on top of everything else, this would be a far different conversation and I'd be having a far different reaction to the album, I think. There are other kernels that would need to be tweaked. Again, some of the political stuff is completely toothless. And again, some of the songs don't really go anywhere, but that's fixable and somewhat forgivable in the context of a broader album with good ideas. But it's like impossible to get anywhere with this because imagine like the most beautiful, Nessun Dorma, the opera song that everyone knows.
Yeah.
Imagine that you're watching a video and Pavarotti steps up to do Nessun Dorma and then he's fucking auto-tuned. And you're like, this thing that didn't need it is ruined. It truly is ruined by an element. And if someone wants to sit there and go, well, if you're gonna let a little bit of auto-tune ruin your experience, I am gonna let it
A
ruin my
little bit.
experience. Because it ain't a little bit. It
Yeah.
is thicker than a king size Snicker. And I just can't abide by it. I'm sorry, I can't. It's not a good, if you want to do vocal filters, which I'm not super crazy about as a singer myself, like in the group that I make music with, they put all kinds of filters on me in post, and I'm like, this just sounds weird. Maybe it's weird because I'm listening to myself, but it just, when you over filter a vocalist, you're not really like trusting them and trusting their ability. And it's like,
Mhm.
again, you've already like distorted Julian's voice in the history of the Strokes. Why are we doing this with the autotune? I think it's perfectly valid to say that one thing more than any other choice on the album ruined it for you. Because imagine someone screamed, they put a track of someone screaming over the top of all the songs. You'd be pissed about that too. It only takes one thing in certain instances.
Mhm.
And that's the one I'll write here. Again, there's some like songwriting that didn't penetrate, and there's some songwriting that needed to be refined. But that is not as big of an issue as totally fucking up the singer and making something like auto tune become the star of the show. It's dumb. There's no reason. And if you want to be like, oh, it was done to reflect a sense of alienation and that distance between the singer and the audience is intentional. It's like, well, then it's an intention, but it's a bad intention and it's
Yeah.
impact over intention. So your intention was to do that, and your impact was, I don't want to fucking have anything to do with this. So congratulations, I guess, if it was what you were trying to do, you pulled it off. You alienated me from an album that could have been a
Yeah.
perfectly good Strokes album.
Yeah. And it's one thing, it can be a clever thing to use autotune when you're singing and criticizing AI. Like that, there can be like clever ways to use that. And I think if it was used in that context, this is a whole different ballgame for what we're talking about with this album. But because it's on literally everything, it's hard to take the criticism that you're having against those sorts of things any sort of seriously when it's also on the songs that have nothing to do with that criticism. When it's on the songs about the political environment, when it's on the songs about personal relationships, it's hard to really take in that criticism and think that you're serious about it when you are using that thing across the entire spectrum of your body of work. So for me, this album, and I honestly feel like I'm being even generous with this album is a 2 out of 10 for me.
I will go slightly higher and give it a 4 out of 10 based purely on the nuggets that shone through. You look at a song like the third song, Lonely in the Future, after a pretty meandering struggle on the 1-2 punch that starts this, as much as like I thought there were kernels in Psycho shit. I thought there were kernels in the shit. Lonely in the Future is one where I'm like, all right, I'm hearing like the most so far classic Strokes DNA. It's got a like decent guitar riff, good hook. It's a little more immediate. It's got good like Strokes cokey energy to it. Lyrically, you can look at it one of two ways. It's either like you think the Fantano stuff is funny, or you think it's a 47-year-old man subtweeting a YouTuber. And
It's
that's
funny. It's funny for the wrong reasons.
sure. Yeah.
It's corny as hell, and I'm sure he thought he did something, but giving Anthony Fantano even more air in this environment is just when you like it's the opposite of what you were trying to do. Is in all the embroiled controversy that Anthony Fantano found himself in because of Halsey, you gave him a get out of jail free card on that stuff by making a bad album and putting a criticism of him on it.
Yeah, and it's just Fantano got a chubby when he found out about it too. He was like,
Yes.
oh. I don't know if he's ever been name dropped in a song before, but you know, eh,
Not by anybody of this stature, that's for sure. I'm sure he has, but not by anybody at this level.
and let's not turn that into a thing where all of a sudden we're doing like diss tracks on critics, especially, you know, YouTubers and stuff. Like we don't need out on that. Like, we don't need Sienna Spiro making an out on that line diss track. And that being said, if she wants to do that, just make sure that you like tag us and everything.
Yeah, just make sure you put the name in there. Yeah.
Yeah, just make sure you make it really clear.
Yeah.
But I just like, yeah. So I mean, it's I think Lonely in the Future is one of the really good instances of where you can see a lot of things that were going right and then just stuff that didn't land. And then Falling Out of Love had like the most extreme vocal processing on the album. And it's the moment where I threw my hands in the air and I was like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Mhm.
What are we doing here? Because you're trying to go for vulnerability in the song, but you're doing all this processing. And it's like, it's not ironic. It's not funny. It's not a subversion. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. To quote Men at Work, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. Like, it's too prevalent on this album. Those clunky choices you can forgive, as I've been saying, you can forgive some of the technical choices in terms of meandering songwriting or lyrics that you don't think went as hard as Julian Casablancas clearly thought they did. The auto tune is a big fat oatmeal cream pie mole on the homecoming queen's face, and I can't condone it. And so I'll give it a 4 out of 10 for the things that I think it did well, but I could not in good conscience go a hair higher than that.
Yeah, there's and I can't imagine if we had done any other Strokes album ever that it would have gotten scored this low. So for the Strokes only current appearance on the podcast to be this one
Yikes.
is like that's a big time yikes. But where can I know we've mentioned some other artists that we maybe criticized pretty heavily in the past, Alex? Where can people find those episodes if they cared to listen to them?
Well, if you cared, if
Yeah.
you really cared to listen to what a couple of losers have to say about music, you go to youtube.com/C/out on that line. And folks, while you're there, you would hit that subscribe button to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You hit the thumbs up to like the video. You click the bell so that you get notifications when we drop new content. And you got to leave mean comments calling us losers and telling us that we don't understand how profound a TikToker's music can be. And we don't know what it's like to be the daughter of a wealthy jeweler to the stars or a tech oligarch. We have no concept, and therefore we are lesser thans. We are lower than the paramecium on fleas on dogs because we can't comprehend the greatness of a Nepo baby with unlimited resources behind her. And God bless her. Maybe it would even be a refutation of those gifts if she didn't go for it. Was she supposed to go work at Jersey Mike's? Go work at manage the All Ball Pan when she can have all these she'd be crazy not to do it. So don't hate the player, hate the game. but especially hate the dumb fucks that feel like they need to come out and defend the multimillionaires. That to me is crazy, because you fundamentally misunderstand the class struggle that Out on That Line represents. We have democratized music criticism. Okay, we took it back. We are a two-man proletariat, and we said, what the fuck are you doing? We're running this monkey farm now, Frankenstein, and we want to know what the fuck you're doing with our time. We took music criticism back. We took music journalism back, and we're never giving up control, because we're about ethics and purity and honesty, and at the end of the day, family. This channel's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it. So come be a part of ours at youtube.com/C/Out on That Line.
And folks, there is no war but the class war. Until next time.